What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Weekly Dose of Dano TV with your host, Dano here, giving you the best content that you're going to find on the internet. I promise you, if you stay for 10 minutes, you're going to stay for the entire episode because we have Chris Gaunt here who's going to drop us some golden nuggets and everything that we need in order to become successful in our everyday lives, whether it's writing, acting, producing, because actually Chris does all of those things. But whatever information that we can grab from Chris, we can apply it into every area of our life. So, Chris, what do you have to say to the Positivity Posse before we get started?
The Positivity Posse is go for it each and every day. Don't let anything hold you back. And if you develop that mindset, it's amazing what you can accomplish.
Wow. Well, I love that. And that was actually what I was going to talk about with my Positivity Posse when we do the one-on-one time. So that's how you know this episode is in alignment. Chris, thank you so much for coming on today. And for my Positivity Posse, you have to welcome Chris on with some fire emojis, some hearts emojis, or anything that you got to do to welcome Chris on the show. So everybody, let's get
fire going on in the background, Dano. Fire in the place.
Yeah, look at that. See, the synergy and the alignment is all in this episode already. I'm so excited to be here with you. Whether you're watching live or on the replay, I want to thank you to my Positivity Posse for tuning in and week out, because this wouldn't be possible without you leaving your comments and your good energy. We can feel every time that you guys support, and we appreciate it so much here on Weekly Dose of Dano TV. Chris actually hit the nail right on the head with what we're going to be talking about for today, and that is to just keep going. And the things that you want in your life will start to manifest. So I know Chris can speak about that for days. Chris is the perfect embodiment of what it really means to just keep moving forward and to have a positive attitude. So, Lou, thank you for dropping the hashtag Positivity Posse. I appreciate it. Jeanette, thank you so much for dropping that. Jeanette says, keep going. Yes, 100%. All is serving us for our greatest and highest good. And Lou says, let's go as well. So thank you for everybody for lighting it up in the comments already in the episode. Chris has such a plethora of great information and strategies on what we need to do to make sure that we're living a very fulfilled, positive, and happy life. He's the best man for the job. And I'm just so happy and thankful that Chris is here today and that you are here today watching this live or on the replay. So it's time to bring Chris onto the show.
Let's go.
Let's go. I'm so excited for you to be here. Chris, man, your journey and your experience, when I was reading about your bio and doing my research and my information on you, I thought, wow, you have so many things to talk about and to cover between writing, acting, producing. I just want to start out with the most fulfilling thing that you do, because as we get to know you a little bit more, we're going to see that there's so many different avenues that we can talk about. So tell everybody a little bit about yourself, and then tell us what the most fulfilling area of your life has been.
Yeah, Dano, I had a really circuitous route into the entertainment world. So for 32 years, I was in a much more traditional business environment where I did not look like this. And I actually had a chance to grow out my hair for an acting role recently. And my wife likes long hair, so what the heck, I'll keep long hair for a while until the next actor tells me to shave it off or do whatever. But for 32 years, I was in a much more kind of parochial business environment, which enabled me to explore different things. And I moved up within that corporation for many, many years. But around 6 or 7 years ago, I just wasn't feeling fulfilled like I had been. So I decided to have a chat with my wife and kids and proactively take the jump into the entertainment world, which fortunately they were super supportive of and embraced. And for the last, going on 7 years now, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, pretty much, it's act, direct, write, produce, act, direct, write, produce, repeat. And around my house, I have these mottos. And my favorite motto is do what you think you can't. And if you do that and embrace that motto every single day, even when times are a little tough, do what you think you can't. And it's amazing, Dano, what things can happen to you if you, like you were talking about manifesting before, if you manifest that, it's amazing what good things can happen. And sure, you may have some ups and downs, but you keep going and plowing through. So I think the most fulfilling thing is me just taking that leap and diving right into the deep end of the swimming pool 7 years ago now, and saying, I'm going to do this. I started in acting, Dano, and Kathy, my wife of 32 years, and we drove about 150,000 miles in less than a year, going to every single opportunity I was given to act, we made the drive and we went regardless. So it's like, yes, I'll be there. I auditioned my tail off. We'd hop in the car or hop on a plane and go wherever, that opportunity happened to be. And the cool thing about that, Dana, was that it really gave me the opportunity to ask a million questions, dive right into the deep end, and really understand how a film works from A to Z. So there's a lot of downtime in the film world. If you're not on set, you have a wonderful opportunity to pitch in if it's a non-union film, or even sometimes a union film if they'll allow you. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. Usually they don't if it's union. But you can ask questions and you can use your 2 ears to really, and your eyes to listen and learn and understand what the business is about. So that enabled me, after I had acted for several years, to say, okay, I really love directing, producing, and writing as well. So because of my business background, I was tapped to start producing quite a bit of film work, predominantly independent film work and episodics or TV series, which has been a blast. And then I was asked to do some directing, which has been amazing. And I also, when I'm not doing that, I enjoy either co-writing or writing my own screenplays. So it's been a wild journey for the last 7 years.
I bet. And, I could just see the way that you're speaking about it, that you decided to bet on yourself and you see the rewards paying off. But one instance or one thing that you just said in what your great answer was the downtime. And I know for me, this is one of the things that I can start to, struggle with a little bit in my life. So maybe this question is for me or for somebody watching right now. In order to manage your time, what are some of your biggest pieces of advice or top secret things that you can do in order to properly manage the time when it comes to acting, directing, and writing?
Wow, I could give you a list, a laundry list of things that I would, if I could do it all over again, I would do the same, and a laundry list of things I absolutely would do in a different way. So I think time is your most important resource, right? For me anyway, that's kind of my point of view, or my opinion is time is your most important resource. And that's the one thing on whether you're on a film set or you're managing a project list, that you are master and commander of. You can control that. So I have a tendency, and I'm learning, I have a tendency not to be able to say no very often. So if an opportunity presents itself, I immediately often say yes and dive right in. Again, that analogy of diving right into the deep end of the swimming pool, and you're able to either sink or swim. So having done this now for a while, I think I'm getting better at taking a deep breath, understanding if the opportunity is a good fit for me, which oftentimes I did in the past. I'd be really more concerned about, can I help someone out with the project? Or is this something that if I say yes to, this will give me more and more experience? And a lot of those things did come to fruition, which is great. But oftentimes, if you say yes to too much, you kind of reach almost a diminishing return. What I mean by that is energy and time, right? So now I'm being a little bit more selective. So I think in terms of learning, I would say be a little bit more selective if you have that opportunity. And because 7 years ago I was starting with really a zero resume, I said yes to everything until I thought maybe one day I'll be lucky enough not to have to say yes to everything and really only pick and choose those things I really want to do. Although I love it all. I love to act, I love to direct, I love to produce, and I love to write. So it's really hard, and it's a challenge every day not to say yes to every project that comes my way. And that's a good problem to have, by the way. No complaints.
Yeah, of course. And I think you just helped me with some of the things that I need in my own personal life because, like you said, there's so many things that we need to do in a day, but it's really about all prioritizing kind of what you get in return, either
Yeah.
immediately or a little bit down the line as well. And
Yeah.
Chris, I know a lot of people when they first start out, or maybe they're still in that kind of phase of, well, I don't know, I'll just dip one toe in the water. And then, like you said, you just diving right in head first in the deep end. So if
Got it
you
done.
have to get, I know you are a coach as well. So
Yes.
when it comes to your clients that you do have, or maybe just anybody that wants to get into the acting, writing, directing world, would your advice be for them to just go right into it and see what happens, or would you just tell them to go into it slowly?
If I was working with someone, Dano, I'd want to kind of seek to understand exactly, to the best of their ability, exactly what they want to accomplish in their career, or concurrent to that, what does success mean to that particular individual? You and I may define success very differently than you, that may define success or a career very differently than 10 other people. So if you line 10 people up, oftentimes they may say very, very different things. So I'd first do the old seek to understand, is the way I call it. Listen to what the client or the individual really wants to accomplish, and then peel back those layers of that onion saying, okay, if you want to become an actor, if you want to become a stage actor, here's the route that you can take. If you want to become a film actor, here's the route you can take. If you want to become a director, here's some of the things that I did that may enable that process, or a producer or a writer. But I don't know if I would suggest that someone do exactly what I do, and that's dive in all four aspects of the entertainment field, write, direct, produce, and act, because it's sometimes very daunting. And again, it challenges myself I challenge myself every day to take a deep breath and say, don't spread yourself too thin, even though I always do. So I'd really want to understand what that person wants to accomplish, and then we'd go from there. But as it relates to acting, I mean, to me, experience is the best teacher. I'm not saying you shouldn't take acting classes. They can be very wonderful. I've done that. They can be outstanding. You meet great people. There's good camaraderie. There's good esprit de corps. But in my opinion, one man's opinion, the best teacher, man, is being on the set, in the battlefield with your comrades, working hand in hand on a project that needs to get done. And that's a film. You have a defined cast, you have a defined crew, and a defined amount of time to get that done. And that's very much like being on a sports team. You have an objective, you want to meet or exceed that objective, and you have a specific time to get that done. And that's where the fun comes in. That's why it's such a blast to work in film or theater or whatever you happen to want to act in.
Yeah, we appreciate all of that because it's like you said, everybody has their own definition of success. And
Right.
to everybody watching, I would highly recommend listening to what Chris has to say. There's a lot of ups and downs that you've probably learned that, that you want to share with everybody as well. So you were going out and you were getting that experience.
Yeah.
At what point did you start to shift your mindset to say, whatever it is that you felt that you didn't have, at what point did you switch it to say, well, this is what I do have. And now since I have this, I know I can get anything that I could possibly desire?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think when I was in the business world, I was feeling very confident about that because I had done it for so many years at a fairly high level. And in the business world, you're rewarded and recognized either with awards or with, monetary increases or both. So you're getting those data boys and good job. And, we had work and development plans every 6 months. So you knew kind of exactly where you are. In the acting world, and I'll take acting as an example, there's very little, sometimes to no feedback. So for example, when you audition, and any of your actors that are listening, when you audition and you don't get the job, it's not like the casting director and or a director or producer calls you and says, hey, Chris, good job on that audition. Here's what you did right and here's what you did wrong. You don't hear a thing. I mean, rarely, if ever, do you get any feedback. So you may think you're knocking it out of the park on an audition and like, oh my gosh, I feel great about this. Meanwhile, behind the scenes or in the backdrop, there could be 100, 200, 300, 1,000 people auditioning for that same role, all thinking they did a fantastic job. And guess what? It goes to one person. It goes to one person, typically what that casting director, producer, director think is the right person for that acting job. But you don't have that feedback. And that to me was the most frustrating. So frustrating, but yet because we're so used to getting feedback and we want that feedback so we can listen to it and try to improve. That's the idea. But without it, you're kind of flying in the dark, right? So for me, it was more swings at the plate, another sports analogy, but I'm going to get myself in front of that pitcher and I'm going to take as many swings as I possibly can. And ultimately, someone's going to say yes. Either I auditioned really well, or I look like the person that, they have in mind for the character, or whatever, their criteria for success in casting that role is. And that's why I've been able to secure the roles I have. I mean, and oftentimes you don't know why you don't get a role. And similarly, you don't know why you don't get it and you don't know why you do get it. So it's a very kind of nebulous thing. So for me, there's really no path to say, oh, I'm exactly where I need to be. For me, it's continuous improvement each and every day, whether it's acting, directing, producing, or writing. My goal, and another mantra I have, is just, one step up the mountain, but try to get just a little bit better every single day and focus on getting good, and then the jobs will come. Good work begets good work. That's a Cillian Murphy quote. But I mean, I remember seeing that and having that drilled in my head. Good work begets good work. If you do good work and you knock it out of the park to the best of your ability, your phone may ring again.
Yeah. And, it sounds like you just said you may have not known where that path was going to lead you or if it even was going to work out. But Just the fact that you decided to, focus on the good, to think about, okay, well, this is a numbers game. It's going to happen no matter what. You're not sure how it's going to happen, but you're confident that it is going to happen. And that's a really, really big secret that it shouldn't be really a secret in the world, but such a great mentality to have. Because when you have that, there's nothing that's going to happen in your life. None of that would really matter because you know it's going to work out in any way that you could possibly desire.
This may help your audience too, for those that are in the field, is that to the extent that you can try to minimize or control some of those variables, that there's so many in this business, it's unbelievable how many variables there are in this business that you're outside of your control. So instead, take a deep breath or a step back and control the things that you can control. For example, if you're in a position where you can write something for yourself, your own screenplay, cast yourself in it, produce it or find producers to produce it with you, and bring that production to life on film as an example, then you've minimized a lot of those variables. You're not auditioning because you've written the screenplay. So guess what? You're going to cast yourself in one of those roles. Why wouldn't you? You're going to produce it, executive produce and or produce it, or both. So you're in kind of the driver's seat there, and you're not reliant so much on other people, but you're taking control of that. And so many independent filmmakers I've been working with, including myself, the last several years, are doing more and more of that, where you're trying to reduce those variables by doing the project yourself to the best of your ability, and then you let the chips fall where they may after you've done that.
Yeah, and with the addition of technology progressing so rapidly over the past few years, you have everything that you could possibly need at your disposal. So whether
Yep.
that's voiceovers, or I know there's even AI that does storyboarding, or even just giving you the idea and
I
then
know.
with ChatGPT and then kind of tweaking it to your liking or to your
Yeah,
style. There's
you
really
got it.
no excuse as to why we shouldn't be able to achieve our dreams. Like Chris said, when you number one, with time, if you organize it correctly, it'll happen. And number two, if you have that positive mindset when you are utilizing that time in the correct way, then there's nothing that can stop us. So everybody, welcome back to Weekly Dose of Dano TV. We have the legend here, Chris Gaunt, who's just been giving us so many golden nuggets. So I hope you have your pens and your papers and you're taking all of this great information about everything that we need to learn in order to be successful. And Chris, the next topic that I want to talk to you about is about collaboration. There's so many people that you've worked with over the years, and some of them may not have been the nicest people to you. And a book that I frequently and recommend is The Four Agreements. And one of those agreements in the Four Agreements is to never take anything personally. So, Chris, can you talk about collaboration and the idea of not taking anything personally in this business?
Dano, another thing I'm working on, not the collaboration piece, because I collaborate with creators every single day, 7 days a week when we're working on a project. It's not just one person. So, if you're at a film award ceremony and you see one person holding a trophy, behind that one person holding, regardless of what the award is, there are sometimes 10, 15, 20, hundreds, bigger productions, thousands of people behind that person holding the trophy. So it really does take a village, particularly in the film world, to make anything, whether it's a very small independent film or a very, very large production. It takes a lot of people, a lot of resources, cast and crew and helpers, folks that we need to thank. And, collaboration is absolutely critical if you want to see anything get off the ground as it relates to, in this case, a film project. And thankfully, 99% of the collaboration efforts that I've had in the last many years have been incredibly positive, and I wouldn't trade them for the world. There are a few exceptions to that. And for me, in terms of trying to get better and constantly improve upon myself and not take it personally, I'm trying to do a better job of that, to be honest. It's basically just business, and you have to remember that. The film world, in this case, the world that I'm living in, is a business unlike any other business. So you're working really hard in a collaborative fashion to make a product, in this case, a film product, a finished film product that ultimately we want someone to enjoy and to buy, right? I mean, it is a product, and that's not always the objective, but oftentimes, and where I'm at now in this career, that is the objective. You want to collaborate with those that you want to collaborate with, whether that's cast and crew or both, and all the other people around you come together as a cohesive team, regardless of your backgrounds, regardless of any other things you've worked on. When you're on that film project, it's again one team, one dream, in order to try to get that done. And there can be some spirited discussions that go on to try to get that done because, it's very intense. You have a defined amount of time, a defined amount of money, and, these things can't drag on forever. So it can get pretty intense in the trenches. So
Yeah.
I'm learning not to take things personally and to really rise above that and treat it like a business, because that's the entertainment world is a business. And sometimes when you're in the thick of a creative project, it can be challenging to do because we're passionate. Creators by nature are very passionate, very driven, I think, to try to see their vision come to life, in this case via film.
Yeah, and it's so important to always understand that, everything I think and I firmly believe everything that people say and everything that people do is a reflection of themselves. So if somebody says something angry and nasty to you, that's nothing to do with you because that person might be having a bad day. It
Sure,
might be low self-confidence, low self-esteem. So once you understand that it has nothing to do with you and, like I said, chalk it up to them having a bad day, then
sure,
you're able to go on and sustain your happiness and not have to worry about what other people think or what other people feel about you, because when you know that that's not you acting that way, I mean, if you engage into it, then yeah, then you
sure.
can make the point and say, I got to learn better than to make other people bring me down to their level. But when you understand that, don't take it personally and you just hold that mirror up to that person, you're going
Yes.
to be okay. And that's one of my secrets in order to sustain happiness, and for longevity as well. And
And I think it's control what you can control, right? So you
yeah,
can't control how someone reacts to you or others around you, whether it's cast or crew. All you can do is control how you present yourself and how you react to that particular person or persons when they're doing something that may not align to how you want to get something done. And oftentimes it's kind of a poor reflection on them and has really nothing, like you said, has nothing to do with you. Has nothing to do with
right.
you. You let it roll off your back and on you go because you can't dwell on that.
Yeah, and we so appreciate. Well, I tell you guys, see, Chris is the perfect embodiment, and I hope everybody is learning so much about what we can take from this information and really apply it to our own lives. So, Chris, I know it has not been all great and all positive. Can you share with us what the lowest point of your career was and what you had to do in order to get out of that bad space that you may have been in?
Yeah, I'm in four very distinct buckets in the entertainment world: act, produce, direct, and write. I think I could give examples for each of those, but for the sake of this interview and time, I think the lowest point, I think, for any person in the acting world, I'm speaking for myself, but I can imagine other actors can relate, is that when you're putting yourself out there, when you're auditioning, either whether it's a self-tape audition, you're sending that in for casting directors to see if you've made the cut to go to the next level, or you're auditioning live. I mean, you're really putting yourself out there, Dano. You're putting your heart and soul on the table, and you really, obviously you feel like you wouldn't be there if you didn't feel like you were right for the role, or you didn't really have passion for the role and want to get cast. And you have to realize that there's only one person that can get cast for any role. And a casting director, I think my mind shift has changed now, where as opposed to me really feeling like I have to sell them on me, the casting director, they want to cast someone for the role because that makes their life easier. So once they cast me or they cast anyone for that particular role, they can check that off the list and then go to the next person that needs to get cast as they work their way down their cast list for that particular film in this case. So rather than put all that pressure on myself for every audition and then feel a bit deflated if you don't get the call, just, it's next man up mentality. So you give it your all, you lay it all out in the field, you give it 110%. And if it doesn't roll your way, on to the next one. And there's so many ways that we can find opportunities to act now. There's really no excuses for not being able to audition a lot if you have the freedom and flexibility to do that. So I think that was the mental mindset for me, is you cannot take it personally, even though you've given it your all. So is everyone else. Typically everyone else is really prepared. Everyone else thinks they're the right person for that particular role, and they can only choose one person. So don't take it personally. Move on to the next role, and wish the person that got it well, and on we go to the next.
I
So,
love that.
and that goes for directing too. You may not get the call if you really want to direct a project. Maybe someone else gets the call to direct that. But there's 10,000 films that'll be made this year or more. There's a lot of directors that are in need, whether it's small independent films or larger, bigger budget films. Same for producing, and then right. I mean, it's all extremely competitive. So I think the other piece is, and I'll kind of put a bow on that, is that you realize that it's a business, but it's an incredibly competitive business. So if
Mhm.
you have a really good pilot or you have a really good screenplay, so does someone else. If you think you're really doing a good job knocking it out of the park directing and you really feel like you're starting to get it, so does someone else. Same for producing, so, and acting. So those four segments that I've spoken about, they're extremely competitive environments where everyone's kind of gunning for very limited spaces for a particular project. So you need to bring your A game, but even if you bring your A game, you might not be the guy for whatever reason, and that's okay. You move on.
Yeah.
You move on.
Yeah, not only are you competing against humans nowadays, but you also have,
Yeah.
the technology that we're fighting against too. And I know that was a big thing for the strike. That the writer, yeah, it was the strike that everybody was trying to fight for in order
Yeah.
to get their compensation correct, and eliminating the need or the usage of extra technology inside of film. So not only that, we got to fight against technology too. And when it comes to like that creative role, like you were just saying, Chris. I know when it comes to acting, writing, producing, I could probably maybe act and I could probably direct, but writing would just blow me away because I wouldn't be able to know where to start. So for you, you've been very successful in each field. And, let's talk about that topic of creativity. Where do you get your source of inspiration from, and what do you tap into?
I'll share a story from a comedian that everyone knows that's listening, Jerry Seinfeld. And whether you like Jerry Seinfeld or not,
Who's
oh,
that?
oh,
No.
Jerry,
Yeah,
yeah,
I just
Jerry. So whether you like him or not, I mean, he's an icon, right, in the comedic world. And the only reason I bring him up is because I remember a story vividly that on an interview that I watched of him, and he said it's really hard for me to concentrate on any discussion because anytime I'm speaking to someone, I'm thinking, how can I use whatever that person is saying in a bit? How can I take what Dano and I are talking about right now and put it into some sort of comedic bit, or how can I tailor that so that it can become part of my comedy routine? So I think for me, again, one person's opinion, I'm always thinking about and observing humanity constantly. I'm thinking about situations and experiences that happened in my childhood, when I was a little kid, preteen, teen, high school years, college years, post college years, work years, now entertainment years. Those are all kind of in the memory bank, and I'm constantly writing down what we call in the business log lines. Kind of a one sentence that describes the screenplay that you're about to write, and a synopsis, kind of a summary of what that screenplay will be. And I've done it hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times. They don't all become screenplays. Sorry, I just kicked my phone. They don't all become screenplays, but many of them do. And then even if and when you think you have a good screenplay, typically you don't, and you need some objective, outside people that aren't afraid to say, hey, here's what the screenplay needs. So you need that collaboration, that collaborative element to come in and really kind of police and polish that script. And sometimes, Dano, it can take months and years to get a decent script. So I mean, it's perseverance, it's stick to itiveness, it's not getting down in the dumps about it. It's juggling, having a lot of projects in a pipeline, creative projects, so that you're not reliant only on one to be successful. You're constantly juggling, and I think most creators that are listening or that will listen to this can relate to that. Because creators, I think, much like musicians or comics, they don't stop, right? The wheels always are turning constantly. I'm not sure if it's a blessing or a curse yet, but it's just
yeah.
it never shuts off.
Yeah, I was gonna say just everything that you mentioned that you think about. I can imagine your wheels are constantly turning 24/7.
Yeah.
So, to everybody out there, that's what we kind of need to do as well. But we can do it in a little bit of a healthier way. I don't, Chris. I don't know if you meditate, but absolutely love meditation. So you do.
Yeah, I mean, my wife and I are really getting into yoga as well. So meditation,
Yeah.
yoga, work out every day for at least an hour. Try to stay, healthy body, fit mind, fit body, because it's so important, right? To me, I
Yeah.
mean, it really helps.
Yeah.
But
And I'm
even
telling you,
yeah, you have to discipline yourself to do that, though. You really do. Or I find myself, if I don't, getting swept into that almost that whirlwind of creativity where it doesn't stop, right? The wheels don't turn off.
yeah, and what happens when
So,
you're constantly running that wheel, it'll break or it'll just burn out. So I'm telling you, meditation is just as important as eating and breathing and sleeping and all that great stuff. So once you start it, it may be a little tricky at first, but I promise you guys, meditation is one of the best things, probably the best thing that you can do in order to achieve ultimate happiness, because you stop, thinking so much and you just start being. And when you're in that mode of being, you can receive more information and more creative ideas. So, like you said, Chris, to all my creatives out there, please take a break from yourself, because we all need it. And when those wheels are turning 24/7, it can possibly turn into something that may not be as positive as we want. And Chris, you said earlier, it takes a village. Everything is just so on point already with this episode. Thank you for coming on to my Positivity Posse. Thank you again for watching live or on the replay. We do appreciate you. Make sure that you're following Chris and I on the social media platforms that you see below. You guys are absolutely amazing. So, Chris, today this part of the segment, we're going to work on kind of your skills and really put your skills to the test right on the spot.
All right, buddy.
So in the world of acting, writing, and directing, I don't know if you thought about this yet, but here it is. If you had to write a movie about yourself, what genre would it be, and who would you cast to be the actor in your own life?
Oh my gosh, that's a good one. The genre, I'll probably say two. I mean, because I'm writing one right now with a co-writer that has to do with an experience when I was a boy, loving athletics, but also loving performing. And when I was a kid, those two worlds didn't really mesh all that well. So that's a really, really good one, I think. And I would have to do some research on a young actor that's probably 13. So if any of your audience has any ideas on that, that would be great. I'd love to see what they would think, or if you do, Dano, that would be wonderful. Because I mean, the lead actor in that will be an 8th grader. So that would be a great opportunity for a young up and comer or an established 13-year-old. And I think the other genre absolutely would be sports driven. And one of my favorite films is, like $1 Million Baby, directed by Clint Eastwood, where, it's kind of a somewhat of a rags to riches story, but very dramatic. And that movie was extremely dramatic, extremely sad, but so riveting. And sports dramas to me are really wonderful because they can be extremely energetic and dramatic, especially if they're not corny, especially if there's a really good message there. I like the ones where they triumph despite all odds, the Rudies of the world. So I love Ethan Hawke. I think he's a really fantastic actor. I mean, but my absolute favorite actor right now is a gentleman that you and your listeners will know, Cillian Murphy. I'm a huge Peaky Blinders fan. I have been for well over 10 years. I think he's a water walker. Everything he does, he's worked with Christopher Nolan, I think 6 times. He just won an Oscar for Oppenheimer. So he is my absolute dream guy to cast in any adult role. Would be my number one choice as an A-lister would be Cillian Murphy. He's just fantastic. So
yeah, and I knew you were going to say that was your favorite actor, because like you said earlier, the quote that you gave was by him. So usually that would be a great idea or indicator of who you look up to. So yeah, he's amazing.
Oh.
I haven't seen Oppenheimer yet though, so I got to get that on my list. But I've seen Peaky Blinders.
Oh.
I was addicted to it, and I was just marathon after marathon, 5 episodes in a row, and I was like, I got so much work that I got to do. So that's where the time management comes in.
I think we're starting our 3rd time, Kathy and I, watching it from the beginning. And I watched it first with, a bunch of people, and we talk about it. And then I finally got my significant other, Kathy, to watch it. And she absolutely loved it. I didn't think she would. She loved it. It's that him riding in on that white horse in that first episode. I'm like, oh my God, this guy is an absolute superstar. And this was 2000, this was at least over 10 years ago. And then he's just absolutely skyrocketed, but what a great actor. So, man, if I could cast him or work with him, it'd be a dream come true. So me and every other actor on the planet. So
well, hey, you know what? Manifest it. And as we know, if we got that positive attitude, anything is possible.
It's on the list. I know it's on the list.
Yeah. All right, cool. Well, I'm excited to see it. So when you start to work with him, let me know, because I want to go and meet him in person as well as you, Chris. So out of all your projects that you've done, is there any one in particular character, if you were to bring one back to life or bring them to life, what would you guys do for the day? And what would you guys do?
Oh, so if I could bring a character back to life?
Yeah. Well, not back to life, but out of all the works that you've done, if you could pick one character to bring to life and spend the day with them, who would it be and what would you do?
Yeah, I recently, I'm working on a really big pilot right now, and it's called The Fledglings. So it's a 8-episode series that has been written by a wonderful creator named Joe Gettle. So he wrote it. he also directed the short slash sizzle, where we're using that as a pitch reel to pitch interested production companies, producers, et cetera, to get this thing greenlit and get it made. And in this particular film, I'm a headmaster, which means I'm kind of the overseer of an orphanage, and I'm really not a nice guy. So I'd like to, kind of revise that character. Father Donovan is his name. And, my hair slicked back. I have the priest collar on. I've got the robe going. I've got the glasses going. Look very different than this. So that was a really fun character to portray. And he's such a nasty guy that it was a blast to live in his skin for a while, just because it's so different than who I am. And that's the beautiful part about being an actor. You can lose yourself in someone where you're not anything close to that person in real life, but you embody that character and become that character. At least I tried to, for the length of that shooting time. But I'd love to resurrect him and really understand what makes this son of a gun tick, because he's not a very good being. And by the way, not spoiler alert, he gets his just deserves in the end. He gets sliced by a vampire. So it's not a happy ending for Father Donovan. That would be the character I would want to explore, because he's gritty, he's mean, he's diabolical, he's self-centered. He's all about himself. So and very different than who I am.
Wow. And that's it's interesting to say that you want to do it with a counterpart, or you want to hang out with a counterpart, because they say the opposites attract, but you would have, maybe you could be that person to turn them right into the happy, great, smiling Chris Gaunt that we're experiencing right now. So it's just so interesting. I love to kind of ask that question to see what the different answers that we get, because like you said, it's the total opposite of what I was expecting. I thought you were going to say a nice happy guy that we can go work out with or go play some golf, but you picked the opposite, so it's interesting.
And I think, Dano, because for the first 20 films or something, I was cast as like the dad next door, so the happy dad, the supportive dad, the loving father, like I am in real life, to a wonderful son and daughter. So it's fun to be the antithesis of that and really live in someone else's skin for a while. That was a blast.
Yeah. So and you mentioned too about the idea of actually embodying that character, which is fun, but after a certain time you can kind of lose yourself. I don't know if you're familiar with Austin Butler when he did the Elvis, how he played his Elvis, and now even when he's speaking, he's just all Elvis. So it's that's kind of scary when I hear about it as a non-actor.
So as I watched his interviews prior to him being Elvis and then during Elvis, and I think it was almost, and I'm probably wrong on the exact time frame, but it was about a year or two of preparation for him to get in the Elvis skin, which was a huge role for him, breakout role. And now he's being cast in everything, as we knew he would, because he did such a great job in Elvis. Mm-hmm. But if you look at interviews prior to Elvis and now, his voice has changed completely. So it's really interesting how he may have, I don't know him obviously, but he may have a kind of a tough time shaking out of that, because he enveloped that character enveloped him.
Yeah.
Remember, the Doors movie years and years and years ago, the actor that played Jim Morrison, it was like a 3-year preparation process for Val Kilmer to play Jim Morrison, which if you haven't seen the movie, it's unbelievable. But he would manifest and be Jim Morrison throughout the home for 24, 36 months prior to, I think Oliver Stone directed that, prior to that movie being shot and directed by Oliver Stone. So can you imagine being someone else for 2 or 3 years? I can see how you can lose kind of reality and who you really are. So great, by the way.
What was the movie again?
The Doors.
The Doors. All right, let me write that down, or I'll remember it, and I could just look at the replay as well.
It's incredible movie.
Yeah. Well, Chris, you're not always inside of the acting studio. You do a lot of work that gives back to local nonprofits near your area. Would you be able to tell us a little bit about the first one, which is Wolf for Warriors?
Yeah, thanks so much. Wolf for Warriors is, I'm really interested in PTSD and the effects of trauma, or the impact of trauma, whether it's for veterans that have served our country coming back, or just PTSD in general and trauma in general. So in 2018, I linked up with some folks because I heard about this organization, and it really tapped into two things I love. I absolutely love animals. I'm a huge animal advocate. I'm a huge animal nut. But it also tapped into my need to want to help those that were suffering from extreme PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, coming back, in this case, from serving our country. And whether you believe in combat or not, and regardless, to me, it's a human being that is suffering in some way, shape, or form, right? So
Mhm.
what we try to do, Dano, is we try our best to pair a dog that is in need, typically a dog that has been abandoned or their owners have passed or there's some tragedy where this dog no longer has an owner. And we try to pair them with a veteran that has come back. And what that does is that gives that veteran something to love and to nourish and to cherish so that this is the objective, they're less likely to do something harmful to themselves,
Mhm.
whether that's substance abuse or physical abuse, whether hurting someone else or themselves, from a psychological standpoint. So it's been incredibly rewarding to do that. And we've seen so many veterans that we've worked with and others, but primarily veterans that have adopted a dog and that dog has changed their life. It gives them a reason or a new reason for living and being. So it's been a really wonderful organization. And as a quick side note, I just finished a six episode film project called Put the Stone Down, acronym for PTSD, where it's all about veterans coming back from combat, trying to assimilate into civilian life after they've experienced the horrors of war and trying to become kind of a normal citizen again. And it always doesn't work out that well. So we just wrapped that project 2 weeks ago. So I'm excited to see that come out. There's 6 episodes.
That's beautiful. And we'll be on the lookout for that as well. And if everybody is interested, you can follow Chris at the social medias that you see at the bottom. And then we also have a second organization that Chris is a part of in regards to animals. So, Chris, take it away and tell us what this is all about, the North Country Wild Care.
Yeah, so North Country Wild Care is terrific, another nonprofit. Both are nonprofit, 501c3 nonprofit organizations. And North Country Wild Care, basically, their objective is to help rescue wild animals that have either been harmed by humans or harmed by cars or have been misplaced. Their mothers or their parents, the parents raising the animal have got hit by a car or died. We take those animals, we do our absolute best to rehab them, and then importantly, you don't keep them, you release them back in the wild, preferably where they were rescued. So if they were rescued, an hour away from where I live, then we try to relocate that animal back to where we found it, and we release it back in the wild, close to where it was rescued. And it's such a rewarding activity, but it's also such a rewarding organization because we're doing good for our wild animals of the world. And again, I'm an animal nut, so this is right down my alley.
Wow, it's beautiful. And thank you so much for the work that you do. And to the two nonprofits as well. Thank you so much for starting these nonprofit organizations to help give back to the humans and the animals alike. Because as we all know, if we live a lifestyle filled with service and gratitude and just, providing that service for others, then in turn, kind of selfishly, if you want to look at it this way, but it's really not, we benefit in our own lives as well, just from throwing out the good energy and taking care of Earth and,
Yeah,
and everybody that inhabits it as well.
good
So,
karma.
Chris,
Good karma.
yeah,
Yeah,
perfect way to describe it. Good
yeah,
karma.
yeah.
Chris, we're almost out of time, and we wrap up the show every single time with the same question. So here it is: if there's somebody watching right now, they're in their deepest, darkest moments, what advice would you have for them in order to get out of that deep, dark moment that they're in?
Couple of things. One is do your best to stay positive. I mean, attitude to me has been such a savior despite dark moments. And if that is not working, if that's not scratching the itch, then I would, obviously, or maybe not obviously to some folks, but depending on where they're at mentally or where their state of mind is, but seek professional help too. So there's no shame in seeking professional help. And like my work with for Warriors, I mean, so many of these veterans in this case, but others are seeking professional help, coupled with us pairing them with a dog, and that can kind of be a nice recipe for success. So seek professional help and do your best to stay positive and focus on those things that you can control, and don't get so hung up. I'm looking at myself in the mirror here. Don't get so hung up on those things that are outside of your control that you can't control, because sometimes those things can eat you alive, and don't let that happen. Focus on the variables or the things that you can control and make the most of that, and keep smiling and keep going. Don't quit. Never, ever quit.
There it is. Short, sweet, to the point. Thank you, Chris, for coming on.
Thank
Can you tell us a little bit about some projects or things that we can look forward to in the future coming out from Chris?
Yeah, so the fledgling, that'd be great. We have a fantastic short. We're doing a big event on May 19th there to create awareness on that. We've linked up with a couple of really well-known showrunners in LA that have helped us work the pilot episode of that. And getting a television project off the ground. We have 8 episodes written, but it's really all about getting that pilot episode so compelling that a producer or a production company cannot say no. They've got to fall in love with it right away. You've got to hook them. It has to have a cliffhanger ending so that the audience is dying to see it. That's called the fledgling. The next one is called Put the Stone Down. That's the one about the veterans that come back after serving with severe PTSD. 6 episodes there. That's in the can and in post-production right now. And then another series, and I directed 2 episodes of Put the Stone Down and acted in it. And another series I directed all 8 episodes is Riding with Pride. And that's a kind of a fun one where if you remember, Nancy Kerrigan meets Tanya Harding, where there was that ice skating duo this is back, 25 years ago, 25 plus, maybe 30 years ago. But this is like that story, but only on professional horses. So they're equestrian riders where there's some nefarious activity going on. And it's a fun one. There's 8 episodes. I directed all 8. And then I have a fun role as Larry Gleck, a goofy horse commentator in a few of the episodes as well. That's called Riding with Pride. That's in post-production now. And those will all be streaming everywhere.
Awesome. Beautiful. I can't wait to see it, Chris. Once those things come out, you got to let me know. And obviously I'm going to follow you as well. I already do follow you. So I'm very excited that you were able to come on today, to come on to the show, share all of your ideas, share all of your expertise and your wisdom as well, because I know I learned a lot from you just from this episode alone. And we have Lou right here that says, really enjoyed the episode. Great episode as well. And I know to the people that can't comment because they're not watching on Facebook or YouTube that they have really enjoyed this interview. And we crushed it today. So thank you so much for coming on to my Positivity Posse. And like Chris said, stay smiling and only focus on the things that we can control. So Chris, thank you again. And to everybody, I'll see you next week for another episode of Weekly Dose of Dano TV. Peace, everybody.
Thanks, Dano.